Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We'll let everybody take a chance of joining us today before we get started, but thank you again for being here. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Wisconsin Water Week, the Thursday edition. We're going to give it another minute or so, just so everyone knows you are joining the Lower Fox and Green Bay Regional Day. Please sit tight and we'll get started in about a minute. All right. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to day 4 of Wisconsin Water Week. Thank you for participating today and hopefully other days this week. There's been a lot of wonderful material presented this week on the wonderful state of Wisconsin and its water resources. We want to say thank you here. I'll be doing the larger speaker welcome as well as the conference welcome for everyone this morning. Thank you to our sponsors and exhibitors. If you have a chance and you've entered in through the website for the conference, please interact throughout the day today during the breaks with the menu button. That's the one that's circled there for you. When you click the menu button, it should bring up a lot of different options on the left-hand side of your screen. Feel free to scroll down through there. There's a lot of fun options for you to interact with today, but for sure make sure you visit the exhibitors and take a look at the sponsors from this week. Thanks to the sponsors, 100% of the receipts for Thursday will be returned to the 10 different organizing regions. So again, Thursday is our regional day. So there's different regional tracks going on all at the same time today. And as I mentioned at the start earlier, you have chosen to be part of the Lower Fox River Green Bay session today. So thank you for that. Over $9,000 was raised statewide to support these local efforts, and it includes over $500 for the Lower Fox River and Green Bay region. So thank you all very much for participating today and supporting the wonderful work in Northeast Wisconsin. Thank you also to the wonderful volunteers helping host the Zooms this week that have literally made this conference possible. Without their support and volunteer help, this would not be possible. So thank you, everyone. Today we have Tony hosting for us, so thank you, Tony. We'd also want to thank the moderators from this week. There have been a lot of folks involved in really getting this effort going. This is the first annual Wisconsin Water Week, and I think it's been going really well. We look forward to the feedback that everyone's able to provide to let us know how you've enjoyed this week as well. We have a couple little thank yous too. Thank you to all the volunteers. A lot of folks from UW-Stevens Point, UW-Madison, UW Extension, and Wisconsin DNR. Without these core groups, again, this would not be possible. So thank you for everybody's effort today. Also want to say a quick thank you to the Red Cedar Watershed Conference organizers in Menominee for encouraging this framework. They'll also be sharing their afternoon keynote hosting Tia Nelson at 2:30. So I think we can all agree that'll be a magnificent talk. And so I'll be reminding folks throughout the day to tune into that at 2:30. Again, you should be able to find access to that if you click on your menu button and through that menu option on the left. When you've signed into the conference site, please also feel free to click around. There are some fun options for you to participate and offer feedback, as I mentioned. Please feel free to participate in the Wisconsin Water Week challenges that they've set up for you. This is another fun feature in that menu on the left-hand side. And as a bit of encouragement, the Thursday participant with the highest score will have a pint of tapped maple syrup from Langlade County sent to your home. So I think that's a pretty good offering. Hopefully that encourages some of you to participate and contribute to some of these volunteer challenges that they've put together this week. The menu will also include things like code of conduct and a help desk, and hopefully a lot of things to help answer questions that you may have as they come up. I really would remind everybody to please be mindful of your comments and questions today, just to ensure a positive collaborative learning environment for everyone. I know we're a wonderful group of professionals, and I know we all appreciate learning from each other. So. This week-long conference started out with a broad view of water quality issues across the nation and globally. Earlier this week, the conference offered a viewing of the film Brave Blue World. It's a really great film that highlights the issues surrounding clean water, particularly clean wastewater, and how the access to clean wastewater differs greatly depending on where you are in the country, and also highlights the varying difficulties in incorporating new technology across the country. So it really highlights a lot of interesting issues and does a great job kind of narrating kind of the state of wastewater in the world today. The film can also be viewed on Netflix, so if you missed your opportunity earlier this week, you do have that option as well. So if you haven't missed it, you can still get popcorn and watch the film this weekend. As the week has progressed, the conference has tried to narrow the focus of the talks from larger statewide issues or national issues, kind of coming down to more of the regional sessions, which are how the day has been broken out today. So hopefully you have had an opportunity to attend some of the wonderful sessions hosted earlier this week. If not, I believe the sessions are all being recorded with the intent to make them available to registrants after the conference. So please make sure you keep an eye out for those emails coming through. Alrighty. Thought I'd give a little bit of background to kind of set the stage for the talks that you'll be hearing today. So this is our wonderful Wisconsin as seen from space. All of you are hopefully here because you registered for the Lower Fox River and Green Bay track. While we all know the value of the wonderful waters of Wisconsin, we really want to focus in on some of the water quality issues of Northeast Wisconsin today, and how a lot of different groups are undergoing a lot of work to try and improve these waters. Around earlier in the week, Wisconsin DNR staff shared some great new maps highlighting the healthy waters of the state. And it really is reassuring to know that all regions in the state do have some healthy waters. Unfortunately, in Northeast Wisconsin, we tend to have some of the larger water quality issues affecting the state. And that's simply because of the history, a long-running history of human impact in our region. And that's really greatly degraded the water quality and aquatic habitats. So now that point source pollution has largely been reduced by statewide permitting and regulation, non-point source pollution has really become kind of a focus for all of us and is guiding currently, how many projects we have and what those projects are trying to address. To help focus a little bit more on the region that we're talking about, the larger Fox Wolf Basin drains this region all through the pool lakes of the Winnebago system, and then down through the Lower Fox River to Lower Green Bay, and then Green Bay is linked then to Lake Michigan. So this is one contiguous water system, and it really drains a large portion of Northeast Wisconsin. There have been many restoration stories, especially highlighting the final cleanup of the PCB contamination that just finished this past year. for the Winnebago Pool Lakes down through that lower segment of the Fox River to Lower Green Bay. And so that's been a wonderful success story. And I really hope you're able to kind of keep these figures in mind as our wonderful presenters share their stories with you today. All right, so here is our lineup for the day. I'll be kind of referencing back to this throughout the time today, but right now I'd really like to get us kicked off and send it over to Congressman Gallager. Congressman Gallager has been wonderful enough to share this morning amidst a very busy schedule, but I really want to give him a couple minutes to talk. He's been a great champion of waters in Northeast Wisconsin. So without much more ado, Congressman Gallager, thank you for being with us this morning.
Well, thank you. And hopefully you can hear me. If not, I'm sure someone will let me know. And let me apologize at the outset. I don't know if you can see behind me, there's the House floor. A vote is going off right now. So I will have to leave a little bit early to go vote on the House floor. But it's great to be with you for a limited period of time and virtually. I know we're all looking forward to being back together in person, and hopefully we can start to feel and see that light at the end of the tunnel when it comes to the pandemic. But it's still nonetheless great and important to celebrate Wisconsin Water Week. It's my understanding that you've had the chance, you're going to have a chance to learn from a whole host of stakeholders from the UW-Madison extension to the Wisconsin DNR, to a variety of NGOs and more. And it's an honor to be part of that team, and to be in such esteemed company. I'm not an expert on these issues, but I have had the benefit of learning from a lot of the experts that you have together today. And I've done my best to be a partner with all of you over the last 4 years. I just want to talk briefly about the importance of preserving our waters and how we're engaging stakeholders from all backgrounds to accomplish this goal right here in Northeast Wisconsin. As some of you know, last year we celebrated the 5th anniversary of the Save the Bay initiative. It was an initiative that started under my predecessor, Reed Ribble. And while I've been in Congress, I've had the opportunity to carry the torch and work with community members and local experts to find solutions to high phosphorus and sediment loads in our waterways. Over the past 5 years, we've assembled in fields and meeting rooms to discuss policies at state and federal levels and the impact they have on our goals. We visited farms to learn about new conservation techniques. And most importantly, we focused on a common goal, which is protecting Northeast Wisconsin waterways. And while the pandemic disrupted quite a bit of our daily life over the past year, I'm proud to say that it didn't deter those working together to promote conservation in Northeast Wisconsin. In fact, I'm not only proud of the work that was accomplished in our community, but also the work we did in Washington, D.C. Over the course of the last Congress. In the last few years, we've passed legislation to increase funding for the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. We have a great bipartisan group of Midwestern members that are fighting every day for GLRI. We authorized full funding for the Land Water Conservation Fund through the Great American Outdoors Act, the most significant piece of conservation legislation in the last 50 years. And we authorized the Army Corps of Engineers to study water capacity and storage in both the lower and upper Fox River basins through the Water Resources Development Act. And these are huge accomplishments, and they weren't easy, particularly at a time where Congress is divided. But imagine what we could get done if we return to some sanity here in DC. So I hope this is just the beginning and that our work has just begun. We have to build on this momentum in Congress and at home in Wisconsin, and we can do it in order to preserve our Great Lakes for generations to come. And so, I know our Save the Bay initiative will be looking for ways to do this, looking for ways to work with all of you, if nothing else, looking to shine a light and highlight and praise innovative practices that are happening throughout the state of Wisconsin. And ideas like expanding access to carbon markets to incentivize greater land and water stewardship are ideas we want to test against you and get your feedback on. And in conjunction with the legislative action we take, I'm really optimistic that we can continue to move the ball forward towards our clean water goals. And so, again, just to end on a note of optimism, we all have a lot to be, even in these troubled times, to be thankful for, if for no other reason than, I don't know any other congressional district or state can match what we're doing in terms of fostering this conversation about clean water. And I think Wisconsin really has an opportunity to lead not just the country, but the world when it comes to clean water and conservation. And it's part of our collaborative spirit as a state. This is a place where, we work hard and we work together, and that's what it's all about. And so as one small part of that effort, I look forward to continuing to work together as we build soil health and, protect our waterways in Northeast Wisconsin. So please do not hesitate to reach out to me or my team if we can ever be helpful. Pauline and my team is phenomenal, and I know a lot of you have worked with her, but we really appreciate your continued help and commitment to this very important goal. So I apologize if that sounded a bit rushed, but I can feel the clock at 4 minutes and 22 seconds to get to the House floor. So thank you for bearing with me in a crazy, hectic schedule, and I really appreciate you letting me join you for a little bit.
Thank you, Congressman Gallager, and thank you for your support through GLRI funding and the Save the Bay initiative. We really appreciate those kind words, and good luck on the vote.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks everybody for chiming in with us again. For anyone late joining our session, so just a reminder, you're joining the Lower Fox River Green Bay session for today, Thursday of Wisconsin Water Week. We just had some wonderful words from Congressman Gallager. He was able to highlight some of the initiatives that he feels strongly about, and we're very thankful to have him representing us here in Northeast Wisconsin. I'd like to transition over to Dean John Caters with UWGB, who's going to share some information about environmental initiatives that the UWGB campus has taken on. So I'm going to hand it over to him to share his information with you this morning. Good morning, John.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Erin. And it's a great pleasure to be here today. And I'm going to share my screen here, hopefully. All right, so again, really happy to be here. Water is a huge effort in our university, and it's got a long history of that. And I would just like to start by saying, hopefully you people are aware of the two major things, in my opinion, that have happened over the last couple of years at UW Green Bay, which I think are both very relevant to this discussion. First of all, UW Green Bay did merge with 3 other campuses at Marinette, Manitowoc, and Sheboygan. And so if you think about those 4 campuses, they're all located very close to the water. Marinette is right on the water, Manitowoc is right on the water, Green Bay is right on the water, and Sheboygan is a couple miles away from Lake Michigan. And actually, as we entered this process, we called it Project Coastal. So right from the beginning, as we became a 4-campus university, water was at the forefront of everything that we're trying to do. The second major thing was—
I'm just going to stop you real quick. I don't think we're seeing your presentation. If you want to just try share your screen one more time. You're good.
All right, I'm not sure what's going on here. Is it up?
We're seeing your desktop. We're seeing the blue background desktop.
That's weird. All right, looks like my presentation is not there. Hold on a second. Somehow it disappeared on me.
That's all right.
Modern technology.
I will take this time to remind folks that if you do have questions for Dean Caters or our next speaker, Emily Tyner, we'll be taking those at the end. So please utilize the Q&A during the talks and presentations that are coming up here. And we'll be addressing those in a common Q&A session at the end of Emily Tyner's presentation. So see, there you go, John. You gave me a chance to remember to tell everybody about Q&A.
All right, can you guys see it now?
We can see your presentation, and then if you go into presentation mode, we should be all set.
All right, not sure what happened there.
No worries.
All right, so I'll go to slide 2. As I mentioned, we are now a 4-campus university with Marinette, Manitowoc, and Sheboygan joining us a couple years back. Again, we're very excited about that. And again, the second big thing from my perspective is the establishment of the Richard J. Resch School of Engineering. And so we've been trying to get engineering in Northeast Wisconsin for decades, and we were finally able to pull that off. And as I get to the end of the presentation, I think you'll see some of the linkages between water and what we're trying to do in the School of Engineering. These 4 cities that we do have on the water, again, are built on the industry that is focused on the water. So the upper left there, you can see the ships that are very prominent in the Marinette area. Sheboygan obviously is very well known for tourism. got a very active area in Manitowoc with their harbor, and the city of Green Bay. Obviously, we've got the Fox River that leads to the Bay of Green Bay, and the transformation that's occurred on the Fox River has been pretty remarkable. Again, thinking back to the 70s and the pollution that was there, and it wasn't always viewed as an asset. And now we've got the Fox River Trail. We've got events that are happening all the time along the river. So that really has been a very positive transformation that we've seen, at least over my lifetime living in Green Bay here for now over 50 years. So really, really positive. We are uniquely positioned on the Great Lakes. So if you look at the Bay of Green Bay, unfortunately it is red there in terms of the stresses that we do have. But again, a lot of effort has been undertaken to change that, and it's a great opportunity for us to continue to focus on water in the region. This is the largest freshwater estuary in the world, which will lead us into some of the discussions from Emily Tyner, which will follow my talks. But again, we're really in a perfect place to study and learn about all these issues. And as Congressman Gallager spoke, this is something that the whole world can learn from, quite frankly. And if we look at the history, like many communities, you know, we started out very agriculture, hunting, those types of things. And we entered this industrial era. And unfortunately, the quality of the watershed continued to decline over that period of time. And, you know, the 1970s was really about as bad as it could get in terms of pollution. And fortunately, we had the Clean Water Act and a lot of federal legislation that happened at that point in time. And since then, we've been on the upswing in terms of trying to improve the water quality of the area. And I think the culmination of that is, you know, one big thing is the completion of the PCB remediation project, which was the largest PCB remediation project in the world at a total cost of over $1 billion. But there's still a lot of work to do. And we've got a lot of folks at UW Green Bay that are focusing on agriculture, you know, runoff, phosphorus, some of the other common things that we know we're going to have to deal with going forward, despite the fact that we spent over $1 billion. The other thing I would point to is that UW Green Bay was formed in 1965, and we kind of got this reputation as Eco-U. And some of that with the university being formed was when things in some ways were at their worst, and that interaction between the university and the community in terms of trying to deal with some of these issues, I don't think can be understated in terms of, you know, the role that we had in that process. As Congressman Gallager mentioned too, this is something that we can share with the world. And I've had a lot of opportunities to do this. So these are a couple pictures of some time I spent down in Chile. And we've got a real strong relationship with the university down there where they continue to send students up here to learn about what's going on in the Fox River, the Bay of Green Bay. And then we also send students down to Chile as well. And a couple pictures here. This is one of their most polluted locations in Chile, which is called Ventanas Bay. And I'm always kind of a fan of the picture on the right there, which has a striking resemblance to Blanky the three-eyed fish from The Simpsons. But in this case, they were very worried about thermal pollution in this bay. They've got a bunch of coal-fired power plants there. Air pollution there is also not the best. They actually had to shut down the school and move it. So again, there's great opportunities for us to learn from other countries. There's great opportunities for other countries to learn from us. But none of this really happens without the science. And again, that's where all the faculty, researchers, students have been very active in learning about this ecosystem that's right in our backyard. And so a lot of the predecessors to my time at UW Green Bay deserve a lot of credit for the work that they did in terms of understanding this ecosystem, understanding the pollutants, working towards remediating this system and getting us to the point where we are today. So again, we're very fortunate to have excellent faculty. We've hired some great new faculty, which I'll talk about a little bit, but having all that information, having a scientific approach to what we're trying to do can't be understated in terms of our ability to make a difference and do it in an efficient manner. So just incredibly important. And we've got some different tools now. So New Water has a very nice boat. We also have a very nice research boat, and you will see students and faculty actively out in the water conducting research. We bring in significant amounts of grant dollars to fund these efforts. And again, these are all ongoing efforts. Without this continuous set of data, this continuous set of information, it becomes very difficult to manage the resource and make a difference. So. And one of those folks I do want to point out is on the call today, which is Kevin Furmanek. And so I like this picture for a number of reasons. First of all, if you look at the date, it was March 10th, 2020. We were all pretty naive a year and a day ago, but this was really the last day, I believe, when nobody was wearing a mask and we were able to get within 6 feet of each other. But it's really great that Kevin won this new NEW Watershed Champion Award sponsored by New Water. It really highlights the partnership between some of these organizations and the university. And in the picture to the far left is Jack Day, who was actually one of my faculty members at UW Green Bay. And this picture was taken in the Jack Day Education Center right at the mouth of the Fox River. Tom Sigmund and staff from New Water and Green Bay Water Utility, and then Kevin and his wife in the middle, just understates the great relationships that we have and how everybody does need to work together to solve these problems. So just a really nice multi-generational picture in terms of what it takes to get this stuff done. That being said, we do have a lot of ongoing challenges, but there are opportunities that go with those challenges. So we do really sit at this nexus of freshwater, agriculture, the dairy industry. We're all very familiar with that. And there's a lot of things being done to try and improve that. Dairy industry is working very hard. That's an area where I've done a lot of research with anaerobic digesters and water treatment and those types of things. But we do have a large number of agricultural operations in Northeast Wisconsin. And we're going to have to continue to focus on that. So again, now that the PCBs are out of the Fox River, we're going to move to other things. We've been working on them anyway, but the focus, I think, shifts to phosphorus and nitrogen and other types of things that still need to be managed to really take this ecosystem to the next level. So one of the nice things is we've got some great new folks in the community. So Titletown Tech over by Lambeau Field. This is one area that they're very interested in. It's one of their 5 pillars to focus basically on agriculture, water, those types of resources. So again, there's going to be new technologies deployed. There's going to be new opportunities to work with folks from, again, all over the country and all over the world to address some of these challenges and frame them up as opportunities from my perspective. So, again, this is an area where I've done some research. So a lot of our farms are very interested in working on this. This is a real small dissolved air flotation system, which is used to basically treat manure after it comes out of the anaerobic digester. And this was a real simple trial, and we were able to get some pretty good results. And there's a lot of farms that are really going to take this to the next level that are looking at, much more complicated technologies like reverse osmosis, ultrafiltration. Again, these come at a huge cost, and essentially you're establishing, mini wastewater treatment plants on a lot of these facilities. But again, as we look at these issues, these are things that you will see probably more commonly going forward. In terms of what we do at UW Green Bay, we're very excited about the academic programs that we have and the skills that we're able to provide to the students in those programs. So at the undergraduate level, we've got programs in biology, chemistry, environmental engineering technology, environmental policy and planning, environmental science. We're also expanding the environmental science program to Manitowoc next year. And there's going to be, so next year it'll really be formally ramped up with some of the upper level courses. But we're really looking at having an agricultural focus to environmental science in that particular location, given some of the other community partners, the farm center down there, and so on. We've also got a geoscience major and a new water science major, which we're very excited about. And then along with that, we have our very historical graduate programs in environmental science and policy, which I actually graduated from several decades ago now. We do have an online master's in sustainable management. And then I think another key aspect of this too is the relationship of our First Nations to the land and to the water. And so we do have an EDD in First Nation education. And we've got a very strong partnership with the Oneida Nation and several others. So we've also got some natural areas that are maintained at the university through the Coffran Center for Biodiversity. And we also have our Environmental Management and Business Institute, which works very closely with business and industry, offers students the opportunity to get a certificate in sustainability and sustainable management. And we've worked with a number of different operations within this region. And just, again, a really good opportunity to think about the environment, business, and policy in a combined fashion, which is really what it takes to get things done. We're very excited about the new water science major. So this is really going to focus on the role of water and in natural processes. It's very interdisciplinary. It's a little bit different than our environmental science program. It's got some very diverse sets of electives there. And it's going to really prepare students for these water-related careers that are going to emerge here going forward. And the other thing is it's really a key component to UW Green Bay's participation in the UW Freshwater Collaborative. And so this is really a statewide effort to try and increase the capacity of the university to deal with water-related issues. Ideally, we'd end up with new faculty lines at multiple institutions. Students would have the opportunity to learn from multiple institutions. We could have PhD students that could be working in Green Bay. Students could learn about the Fox River here, but then also have the opportunity to go over to La Crosse and learn about the Mississippi River, go down to Milwaukee. So again, really thinking about system working very collaboratively and having the state of Wisconsin become a center of excellence on these types of issues. So just a huge opportunity for us going forward. And this will all be part of the state budget discussions that are ongoing, but we're very hopeful that the state is going to invest in these opportunities and help us move these programs forward. again, the big thing for us too is getting students out in the field and doing research. And we see a student here holding a fish, and actually we've got public television is going to be here next week filming something very similar to this to try and get the word out. So we're very excited about that with Patrick Forsyth and his great research team that he's got. We also do freshwater monitoring, runoff monitoring, well water studies, water treatment studies, environmental restoration. Again, we've got a huge number of students that are gaining expertise in these areas and then being able to go out and contribute in these professions for the many opportunities that are going to exist in water-related careers going forward. We can't do this without partners, and so there's a huge number of partners, both public and private sector. And again, these partnerships come in the form of, providing education, working on collaborative research projects. WISIS is a UW partner in terms of technology development and patenting and those types of things. So again, I think the School of Engineering is going to help from that regard. New Water is a very strong partner for us, as I mentioned earlier. Again, other universities. Kevin Furmanek has had a very strong watershed monitoring program for a number of years, trying to get high school kids involved. And again, that's a big part of what we're trying to do in the College of Science, Engineering, and Technology, is also reach down K through 12 and get more students interested in STEM in general, but water and these types of issues in particular. So the last piece then is the Resch School of Engineering. Again, this was established in 2018. And we're very excited about where the Resch School of Engineering is at this point in time. So it really started with 3 engineering technology programs in electrical, mechanical, and environmental. We did add mechanical engineering also in 2018, and we will be adding electrical engineering in the fall of 2021. Also within the Resch School is computer science and mathematics and statistics. And one of the showcases for us, obviously, is the STEM Innovation Center that you see in the upper right corner. This is a $15 million building. $5 million came from the state, $5 million came from Brown County with the 0.5% sales tax, and then $5 million came from community donors. And what that allowed us to do is get a number of organizations all within one building. And so Brown County Land and Water Conservation is also a very strong partner for us. UW Extension is a strong partner. And then the Einstein Project, which provides K through 8 science education kits. So again, trying to look at this very holistically in terms of what we can do to just raise awareness of these issues and create the workforce of the future. And then that being said, we're also partnering with some other folks in the community. So Cellcom Exonis is a project that we're going to be working on. And then Microsoft is a very strong partner within the Titletown Tech operation over by Lambeau Field again. They've got a very strong emphasis in AI, artificial intelligence for Earth, and they've been providing some funding for us for a couple of different projects. And so we're very excited to see what Microsoft and their different types of technologies can bring to this particular topic, and how can we use these technologies to our advantage going forward. And Emily will probably mention this in her presentation, but one of my goals is for us to be the most technologically advanced NERR within the NERR network, and having partners like Microsoft and Cellcom and those sorts of folks is going to allow us to get to that point. And so again, very excited about all the resources that we do have in our community. And just one quick simple example of that, we're working with Cellcom to put up a LoRaWAN network on the bay. So you can't really see it very well from the picture, but those 3 towers basically would circle the bay. And it gives us the ability through this network to basically monitor a number of different sensors. And so the advantage of this network is you can develop really low cost sensors compared to sensors that have been used in the past. A lot of them are lightweight. You can get by with less batteries because of the way the signal is sent back and the frequency with which the signal is sent back. And so we're already embarking on a number of different projects. The idea is ultimately we have 7 towers that would basically cover the Fox River, the bay, and we could get a whole bunch of students engaged in a bunch of different activities related to these sensors. And of course, with electrical engineering and the School of Engineering, those students could be involved in the design and construction of the sensors. And so the whole thing ties together very nicely in terms of, coming up with a better way to get the scientific data. We've got statisticians that can analyze the data, and it really becomes a very comprehensive approach to what we're trying to do. So my conclusions, again, I think we're in a really great position here in Northeast Wisconsin with the Resch School of Engineering, with UW Green Bay. We've got a long history of doing this. Again, we've made a big difference in terms of what's been done over the last multiple decades to transform the watershed. We've got great new programs, which will hopefully attract more students to UW Green Bay. We're sitting on the largest freshwater estuary in the world. We've got multiple campuses that sit on the water. This should be important to UW Green Bay as a whole, and it has been since this merger. So we're very excited about that. And again, if we don't do this, there's multiple aspects of our economy that are going to suffer if we can't get our arms around creating a better water resource. So again, there's a big basis in industry. Agriculture is going to continue to be incredibly important. and obviously tourism and recreation is a huge part of Green Bay in terms of the message we're trying to send out to. The bigger thing for me, obviously, is training students for the water economy. And the beauty of it is we've got this incredible laboratory right in our backyard that the students get the opportunity to participate in. So with that, I am going to stop sharing. They got that figured out. And at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Emily Tyner. And Emily joined us in September of 2020 as our first Director of Freshwater Strategies at UW Green Bay. And she comes to us from UW Milwaukee from the School of Freshwater Science. And Emily's just done an incredible job of hitting the ground running. And one of the big projects that she's involved with is this establishment of this National Estuarine Research Reserve, a NERR. And so she's going to take the time to basically give you an overview of what the NERR will mean for Northeast Wisconsin and why it's important. So with that, Emily.
Thank you, John. I will get into slide sharing mode as well. I'll assume it looks okay, unless I hear otherwise. Thanks for that introduction. And yeah, I'm here and excited to be talking about the designation of the Green Bay National Estuarine. Oh, yeah.
You're not sharing your screen yet.
Oh, aha, I see.
Awesome, thank you.
Oh, and I'm going to stop for 1 second and just so I can get my notes up too. Looks good?
You're good to go.
Great. Okay, thank you. Okay, great. Yeah, so little tech issues there, but yeah, I'm really happy to be here and be talking about the designation of the Green Bay National Estuarine Research Reserve. I'll probably call it NERR from here on out, and that is the acronym we use for this system. So as John said, and as Aaron said too, we are really all here together in this session because of Green Bay and our connections to this waterway. And whether that be kind of ecosystem connections in our work, our professional work on the water, or historical ties, family ties, kind of economic, cultural, spiritual, or recreational, we're here because we love and work on this great system and really the world's largest freshwater estuary. And there's certainly a lot to celebrate of what's been happening over the last decades and into now. And it's now really seems like the time to be thinking about our future and to kind of steer the course for the next decades to 100 years around water around in the Green Bay region. So as we heard from Congressman Gallager and Dean Caters, there's been really extensive progress made on ecosystem restoration and rehabilitation in the region, including, as John talked about, the Fox River cleanup, also the Cat Island chain, one of the largest barrier restoration projects in the world, and certainly the work of Save the Bay and Clean Bay Backers, and really so many others, including kind of folks on this call and these logos who have worked to get us to where we are. So now, as we're thinking about the kind of future and what it will take to dream up our future for the region and for the waterways, I think there's really a need and a time for a kind of a coordinating force that can be a platform to help us integrate and think about water research, education, community engagement, and stewardship around water. And that's really where we see the Green Bay NERR, with its official designation when that happens, being a huge asset for the region. So I really want to talk now about what it means to be part of the reserve system and to share with you why I'm excited to join the reserve system, and then some of our timelines for getting this designation and ways to get involved also. So the NERR system, it's a national network of 29 coastal sites, and it's a partnership between coastal sites and NOAA. And the partnership is designed to promote really 4 pillars: education, research, stewardship, and training. This being part of this reserve network brings funding for these 4 pillars: this research, education, stewardship, and training. I do want to emphasize that this is a non-regulatory initiative, so there's no new regulations imposed because of a NERR coming to a region. It's very much kind of focused on community goals for the region and community-led management. One phrase that the NERR system uses that I really like a lot is locally relevant, nationally significant. And that means that each individual NERR within the NERR system is focused on addressing ecosystem concerns within their region. So here in Green Bay, that could be things like HABs and fluctuating water levels, coastal erosions, emerging contaminants, kind of whatever they are, that's where the research focus can be. But by joining this national network, we both bring expertise from NOAA and from the other 29 reserves in the system to bear on the problems we have here. So for example, changing water levels is certainly a concern here. Maybe we don't have all the coastal engineering expertise we need here in Northeast Wisconsin, but we can kind of tap into reserves along the oceanic coastline who are dealing with rising sea levels as well and kind of learn from their experience. In addition to being part of the another benefit of being part of the national network is it kind of brings prominence to the work we've done in Green Bay, and I think really sets us up for potentially more national and international research collaborations to kind of highlight all the work that's already been done. So I'm excited about that, kind of bringing our story to a national stage. And then finally, the NERR mission is very much focused on place-based, hands-on, local control, kind of local initiatives. And that's, I think, suits this region well to kind of have local control over what a reserve would be. So I just want to talk now about this kind of state-federal partnership, what that would look like. So at the state level, so I should say that University of Wisconsin Green Bay is the state lead on this and will be responsible for the day-to-day management of the reserve. The state is also responsible for land management, and kind of all the areas that are in the reserve are state controlled. The staff members that come with the reserve, when the reserve's up and running, that are hired for the reserve, all that, will be state employees. The day-to-day implementation of programming is at the state level, and then 30% of the funding comes from the state. And then the federal level, the kind of partnership with NOAA, is that NOAA provides national program guidance. So there's some programs at a national level that we could tap into here in Green Bay. Technical assistance on ecosystem or economic or kind of coastal challenges, we have access to that. And then 70% of the funding for the NERR is from NOAA through congressional appropriations. So I think being part of the system for me is just an exciting aspect of this work. And as I mentioned, there are currently 29 reserves in the NERR system. They're highlighted on this map. So they include Alaska, Hawaii, Puerto Rico, and then for most regions of the US. And then you'll see in red, there are 3 reserves that are currently in the process of being designated. There is us here in Wisconsin, there's a reserve in Connecticut, and then one in Louisiana. The reserve in Connecticut is a bit ahead of us. They've already selected a site, but we're pretty much on par with the reserve in Louisiana, or the plans for the reserve in Louisiana. That's a Louisiana Sea Grant project. And we really see ourselves as siblings in this process. It's been interesting and fun to learn from them as they go through the designation process and do kind of public engagement programs similar to like what we're doing today, and to kind of learn from their stories as well. So that's been nice to be going kind of co-designation with another reserve. And then just in a few years, hopefully all 3 of us will be online, and then the reserve system will become a 32-member system. Oh, yep, and that's the Louisiana Reserve that I mentioned. So I want to clarify one thing that I don't think I've said quite yet, is that the reserve will have a physical location in the Bay of Green Bay. And that location has not been decided yet. It will be a kind of looking at, the research will be focused on the Green Bay estuary, but this reserve is representing what NOAA considers the Lake Michigan, Lake Huron biogeographic region. And so this reserve kind of serves the region widely. So each biogeographic region that, as NOAA determines it, has a reserve, and this one will become the one for Lake Michigan and Huron. So what this means is that the kind of built infrastructure and the kind of research focus initially will be in Green Bay, but that the lessons learned in the estuary will have applications to estuary and coastal and wetland areas within the region on Lake Michigan and Lake Huron. And also additionally, NERR-related research can kind of happen outside the boundaries of the reserve, and that we as a reserve can be partners in those research endeavors, but kind of the research that we would do as a system would be within Green Bay. And certainly the educational opportunities, the access to the training and the stewardship opportunities, all of those would be available for the kind of the whole region. So kind of a physical location in Green Bay, but serving the region quite broadly. And we really are trying to think about what that means to have a regional footprint as we go through designation and think about and plan for the NERR reserve. So as an example of what that looks like, the two other reserves in the Great Lakes are, there's one on Lake Erie, Old Woman Creek, that was established in about 1980. And then there's one on Lake Superior in Superior, Wisconsin. That's a newer reserve. It was established in 2010. And that reserve has their built infrastructure in Superior, Wisconsin, and some of their reserve goes down the St. Louis River, but they certainly do serve the Wisconsin shoreline of Lake Superior. They are a convener of information and a kind of gathering place for those communities. And in fact, they share time with staff in Ashland so that they can really have that reach for the reserve. And we, I can see something similar happening here. Well, we can kind of share some staff time or kind of work broadly. So we're excited to be joining this network at the national level, but especially to be joining these other Great Lakes reserves and to kind of learn from the Lake Superior Reserve as they move forward in their new management plan and kind of working collaboratively once we're up and established. Now I'll talk a bit about the programmatic focus, what it kind of means on a day-to-day level to have a reserve and what kind of programs we'd focus on. So kind of at a top level, the goals for our Green Bay Reserve would be to help address coastal management issues through both coordinating research at a local level, kind of within the Bay, and then also by tapping into this national system-wide research. So I mentioned at the bottom there that this research, education, stewardship, and training, those are the 4 sectors that a NERR works within. And at a programmatic level, each NERR contributes to this thing called a system-wide monitoring program. The acronym is SWAMP, where there's a suite of samples, water quality, biota, weather parameters that are collected at each individual reserve. And then that information is fed into the kind of national reserve system so that NOAA and others can kind of keep a pulse on estuary health around the country, both freshwater and saltwater estuaries. And so we'd be part of that network. And also we'd of course participate in very much local driven research initiatives on local concerns. So that's one kind of major pillar. Another one is this enhancing public awareness and understanding of estuaries and coasts. So this includes partnerships with K-12 school districts, working with kind of community science initiatives to kind of get adults and communities involved. NOAA says K through GLRI is their goal, so kind of all students of all ages. And the national program that I think is exciting for us that we could kind of participate in here is something called the Teachers on the Estuary program, where each reserve can bring teachers, local school teachers to the reserve for a 2-week program to learn about estuarine science, some hands-on kind of experiential learning, collecting samples, and then take that learning back to the classroom. I think like 13,000 teachers have participated in it over the last few years, and it would be exciting to bring something like that to our area. And just like with research, again, we can have very much local design programs. Lake Superior has a Rivers to Lake program where they work with local school districts on water collection. I envision something like that here for us as well. We also have access to this new fellowship called the Margaret Davidson Fellowship, where each reserve gets funding for a graduate student for 2 years who works with a local university and then partners with the reserve on locally relevant research that serves the reserve. So that's an exciting opportunity to bring additional funding to the graduate students to our region. And then 2 kind of, I guess, maybe unique things that we're thinking about here in Green Bay for the Green Bay NERR is one is that we really want to have a holistic focus on water and the connections to communities and ecosystems around water. So we know that the science will follow with the NERR, that's kind of built into the infrastructure, but we want to be thinking about what it means to connect to water kind of from an artistic perspective, from storytelling, from kind of our cultural history, all those things. So we're really kind of trying to plan and think about our full connections to water and kind of not just the science, because we know the science will be there. And also, as John mentioned, we really want our Green Bay NERR to be the most technologically advanced NERR in the system. And as he was talking about, we've had some partnerships and conversations already with Cellcom and Exonis and Microsoft about what that would mean to have a tech-focused reserve system. So one of the kind of maybe the gems of the reserve is the visitor center that will be both an interpretive center with some sort of like public exhibit These are examples from the Great Bay Reserve in New Hampshire and then the Lake Superior Reserve. These typically include conference space, a full lab to do water sampling, classroom areas, potentially overnight accommodations like dorm space for visiting students or researchers from any other part of the country or world, boat access, both maybe for a big research vessel to come in and also some kayak and canoe launches, and then a weather station. And I do want to say that with this kind of built infrastructure and a visitor center, our goal here would be to collaborate and really not compete with existing entities like museums and other nature centers. We'd want to think about what niches are not filled and how this NERR could kind of fit in with what already exists in the landscape and not be a competitive force for visitors or students. And I didn't yet talk about stewardship and training, so I do want to mention that. So the goal with this part of the NERR sectors is to help municipalities and cities in making data-driven decisions and how they work with and use coastal resources that really account for economics, communities, and the kind of coastal ecosystem features. So this involves working with planners and local officials, business owners, farmers, landowners, stakeholder groups to think about applying data. The form of this would be technical assistance on coastal zone challenges, things like stormwater management or development or working waterfront. So being able to bring in NOAA expertise to kind of help with our local challenges. Also offering trainings for decision makers. And then there's a program called the Science Collaborative. It moves around every 5 years to different universities, and it helps NERRs translate their data into actionable science. So we could become part of that network as well. So I've right now laid out some of the benefits of the system, joining the system and what the reserve programmatic focuses on. So now I want to talk about what goes into designation and where we are right now. So we're currently, or to back up and say, the first step of designation starts with a letter of interest from the governor's office to NOAA. For us in the region here, that was in 2019. And the next step, and the one we're at right now, is the site selection and nomination process. And I will talk about that in just a second. But I will say once a site's been selected, the next major milestone is the drafting of an environmental impact statement and the writing of a management plan. And again, I want to emphasize that a management plan does not impose new regulations. So whatever is already happening in the state or in the area that reserves designated, whether it be fishing or hunting or shipping or kind of major boat traffic, all of those activities are fine. They're written into the management plan and things continue as they are. So there isn't a kind of a new imposition of rules because of the NERR being designated. So those are drafted and they go out for public comment. Meanwhile, there's a designation or a development of MOUs, of memorandums of understanding between NOAA and the state, and eventually a record of decision and a designation ceremony. So yeah, we're currently in the site selection and nomination phase, and UW Green Bay is leading this process, but it's very much advised by NOAA, the governor's office, and our kind of state NOAA coordination team. There's an overall site coordination committee that's helping to guide the process. They just met for the first time in January, and then a site development team that will, and a site evaluation team that will help kind of move this forward. Membership on this team, of these teams currently is comprised of state agency partners, federal partners, other universities, our tribal partners, some private sector folks, economic development, municipalities, educators, and private citizens. So our site coordination team and our site development team are formed yet, but our site evaluation team has not been formed. And if you potentially have an interest in joining that site evaluation team, we're happy to hear about that because we're looking for kind of broad membership in these initiatives. So the work of these committees is the site coordination team is kind of got the other committees together. That's been their first task of these organizational readiness. And these tasks are something that every NERR goes through. They're provided by NOAA that you kind of check the box as you move through designation. The site development team, which we're just getting started now, will be responsible with reviewing the relevant geography. So what areas will be considered in the selection of a site. They'll help develop the site selection criteria. This will be both with guidance from NOAA, because NOAA has some guidance that we'll follow, but also adjusted to reflect local concerns and kind of our local ecosystem here. Once that site selection criteria has been established, the team will do some preliminary site screening and identify about 3 to 5 top sites that could be included in designation of the NERR. They'll then hand off their work to a different committee, a site evaluation team, who will recommend, who kind of will establish or will set their own way of applying the criteria, review the criteria, and then eventually recommending a site for nomination. If the site is approved by, kind of informally approved by the governor's office and NOAA, then that team will go through a process of delineating the boundaries and determining where these boundaries are for the reserve. Eventually that recommendation goes to the site coordination committee, who submits it as a recommendation to the governor's office. So our timeline for this is, well, our full designation timeline, it's ambitious, but we're trying to have designation by the end of 2024. So kind of a late fall, early winter, fall 2024 designation. And the 2 big milestones in getting there are the site selection, having a site selected by fall of 2022, and having our management plan completed by the end of the summer of 2024. So this is what we're working towards when I mention those timelines. This is what we're going for. So it seems far off, but there's a lot to do along the way. So we're trying to work hard at moving towards this goal. We have had some initial successes so far, support, both funding support and partnership support. Initially, we've gotten support from the Fund for Lake Michigan and NOAA's Office of Coastal Management. We submitted funding requests to Wisconsin Coastal Management Program to help with some of our mapping work and our public outreach initiatives and making those accessible during times of COVID and maybe beyond. We are really trying for accessibility and transparency in how we're moving this designation process forward. And then recently applied to Wisconsin Sea Grant, and I just want to mention this proposal. This was, we've been invited to submit a full proposal, but this is to do work on a soundscape. So recording the sounds, both the natural sounds and the storytelling sounds around the bay, with eventually an idea of creating a 3D or a fully immersive sound exhibition that could be housed at the university and then fully housed at the NERR when it's up and running. And I mentioned that just to highlight that this was a proposal I wrote in collaboration with a music professor here at the university. And it is part of our effort to try to think holistically about water and to cross or to kind of build bridges with academic units that maybe aren't always working together. That's one of our efforts here, is to kind of think holistically about how we talk about and work around water. We also have had support from the time and energy and interest from some of the agencies right here. These are the folks that serve on our site coordination committee, and we really value their perspective that they're bringing to the site coordination process. So if you have an interest in becoming involved in any capacity, whether it be very involved or just stay up to date on what we're doing, we have a few opportunities for that. The first is that we are going to host a virtual kickoff event. The same event will be offered at 2 times. This is a chance for the university and our partners working on the NERR to kind of lay out our plans for the designation, to kind of get excitement going about this work, and to answer public and stakeholder questions about what it means to have a designation in the region. So the times are here. We will be getting a link out, I think, next week, and I'll forward it to people on our email list. So if you want to get information on that, I'll invite you to join our email list. But yeah, please do share the word about this event with others to kind of get drum up excitement for the NERR. And the other thing is, if you are keen to kind of have a more in-depth conversation about the NERR and maybe share your thoughts for what niche or work the NERR can fill and what the management plan might look like long-term, we really welcome those conversations, either through a community listening session or potentially a presentation to your group or network similar to this one. So I invite you to contact me. My email is at the bottom here, and we can talk about what that might look like. Additionally, if you kind of just want to stay informed through newsletters, which is perfectly fine too, on our website, it's uwgb.edu/NERR. There's a program update and info page, and that has a sign up for our newsletter. It's a quarterly newsletter, and we'll kind of keep you up to date on what's happening. So I think that's all I have to say about the NERR, and I'm very happy and welcome to answer any questions that you might have. Okay, thanks, Erin.
Thank you, Emily. All right, and thank you, John, both for the wonderful presentations and for kicking off our morning. We do have a few questions that have come in. So Emily, if you are ready, we will send some of those your way. So the first question was, how can we make an argument for having the NERR located in Green Bay? And what criteria are considered in this site location? So I think you touched a little bit on this, but maybe for the more active folks in our community, what can we do? What do you need from the community to kind of argue for it in one place or another?
Sure. Well, so right now, the relevant geography that we're considering for the NERR, and as it was laid out in our application to NOAA and our funding request, is essentially the Green Bay estuary. So that's what's on the table to be considered, and that whole area is being considered. And then we'll get into more kind of the specifics of where the reserve is and the physical built infrastructure that's going to come up in the next few months. So that's not kind of a concern. That's definitely where we're planning to locate it. But as for advocating for it, I think advocating was the question, or thinking about that? Yeah, that's great. I think the biggest thing we ask now is just to spread the word to your networks and your communities and kind of talk up what the NERR can be. Emphasize that it's non-regulatory, that this is very much community-led, state-led, and kind of share that message. And then we have moved down this timeline, there'll be particular points where we want community input specifically, where we might ask you to talk to elected officials, but right now it's all about kind of getting the word out and talking about what the NERR will be, what it means for the region. Did that hit that? Was that the right answer? Did I cover everything?
I think that was good, thank you. Then we had another question come through, again, Emily. I'm with an organization that helped fund Northeast Wisconsin Land Trust land acquisition on Point Sable. How will that help this effort, and what do we need to do next? So again, right, I think from a community standpoint.
Okay, yeah, certainly Point Sable is on the table as a potentially being included in part of the NERR. And I think the actual, like the site development committee will go through the work of determining what criteria we're looking for in reserve properties and what we'll actually bring in to be part of the reserve. And the same, I think, thing I said before is kind of just stay engaged with us. If you have particular spots in mind, to kind of email them to me if they're within the Green Bay estuary, so that we can make sure that they're on the radar of the site development team as they're thinking about the relevant geography. And in terms of like long-term acquisition, I think one thing I didn't mention is that the NERR will have to be primarily on land that's already state-owned. I think designations can have some federal land, but it has to be less than 40% of the designation, and the primary focus is on state-owned land already. So we'd only be looking at areas that are already state-owned. But over time, there can be new acquisitions to a reserve, but the initial focus will be on the state property.
Great. I think we do have another question that kind of takes that and flips it around a little bit. But how might the GB NERR reach the broader communities and residents in the Lower Fox, Wolf, and West Shore watersheds?
Yep, that's a good question too. And certainly we do not want to just design a NERR that's only about communities right on the bay, because we know the watershed is important and a huge contributor to what happens in the bay. So I think when it comes to writing the management plan, so for example, Connecticut is the reserve that's in designations a little bit ahead of us, but they have a good model for what they've been doing. For every kind of piece of the management plan, they've been having these public information sessions, well, all virtually, where they kind of lay out whether it be the land, the research part of it, the education, the land management, and they invite public audiences to come. And I think when it comes to writing the management plan, that's going to be what we really want to think about broadly about the communities in the watershed and what role they might have in terms of programmatic focuses or research focuses. But we know that the watershed, like it's not just a open water initiative, it's very much about the watershed. So whatever work happens will be connected to activities in the watershed, and the research and the education, the community training, and all that would be offered to the region broadly. Yeah, certainly not just people who live on the water directly.
Thank you for that. So what sort of feedback are you needing from the general public to demonstrate the need for the NERR in this region? So I think more involving like what do you need from folks to kind of help bolster your sales pitch, if you will. I know you've offered your contact information, and I really do encourage folks who are interested in being a part of this to contact Emily. But if you could provide, some feedback that you would be wanting, or some actions that folks could be taking, if there are any right now.
Yeah, I will say that we've had really great both local and congressional support so far. So Congressman Gallager and his staff have been really on board, Senator Baldwin, certainly in Governor Evers' office. But I think it never hurts to hear about enthusiasm for the NERR. If those are to your elected officials, that wouldn't hurt our case at all. We'd love to hear that. Certainly they already are on board, but that would help. And I think at kind of even a very local level, we have been talking to officials in major communities around the Bay, Sturgeon Bay, Brown County, Green Bay, Peshtigo, Marinette, and yeah, expressing the same thing to your local officials there, that this is an exciting initiative, that you as individual citizens are excited about bringing this to the region, and making sure that we have kind of regional support from the very much kind of mayor level all the way up to the federal government, because it does take a building of all those people to come together for the NERR to get designated.
Great, thank you. Now can you detail 2 or 3 specific challenges facing Green Bay currently that the NERR might help to address?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I think, as I mentioned before, change water levels, certainly this kind of movement from high to low water levels is a concern. So I think the ability to, as I mentioned, have expertise from beyond the region, who, like other reserves, have dealt with rising water levels and what that means for infrastructure and to their reserve properties. So we could really learn, I think, from coastal sites about what it means to have rising water levels and how you prepare. Another thing certainly is climate resiliency. That's been a focus of the NERR system, and certainly a concern here in Green Bay and Northeast Wisconsin. So to be able to tap into and join this National Reserve Network on how they think about climate resiliency, making our shorelines ready for climate change, making sure communities are aware of these kind of issues. So that would be one thing. And then maybe at a very local level, the harmful algal blooms and kind of phosphorus loading, those conversations will be, we hope that the Green Bay NERR can be a kind of a convener point to organize and share information and kind of gather and talk about the kind of the future of that as we're kind of going through new plans for managing phosphorus.
Thank you. I think we have one thing, just for a clarification, and then we've got one more question here. Can you kind of distinguish between the boundary of the NERR and then the site designation of the NERR? Yeah, okay, that is confusing. We're kind of working through that ourselves as we start the site development process. So essentially the NERR, as I mentioned, it kind of, we're calling it the Green Bay NERR, but it really serves Lake Michigan, Lake Huron. So this will be, in Noah's eyes, the kind of Lake Michigan Reserve, although it will have a Green Bay name to it. And then the area being considered for within the boundaries, so this is just being considered, it won't actually maybe be the whole area, is the estuary, the kind of full estuary. Right now, we're kind of thinking, we're looking from Marinette to Sturgeon Bay and then all the way down to Green Bay. And then within that, there'll be kind of specific areas that get designated. And that will include kind of a site for a visitor center, and then very likely non-contiguous, so not connected kind of natural area parts within the bay. So these will be potentially areas that are interesting for kind of a research perspective or kind of a preservation perspective. And what those specific areas are and how those areas are determined to be part of the NERR is what the site development team will do. But I anticipate that it would probably be some non-contiguous property, like I mentioned, with a visitor center in one area, and then maybe little pockets of other areas that will become part of our research focus. Did that clarify that? I know we're still ourselves working through it. We're just had a conversation this week about what it means about the boundaries. So I'm happy to kind of keep providing people updates as we go. And we don't necessarily have a final answer now, but we kind of know where we're headed, I should say. I think that was a really good clarification, I think, for folks kind of coming into this as a new concept. So thank you.
If, as a reference point, Lake Superior has a non-contiguous reserve system where they have their building on Baker's Island, and then there's not area that's theirs, and there's area down the St. Louis River. I think we're kind of bigger system that maybe just they're smaller that they're considered there, but that is a model for us too, this kind of non-contiguous properties.
All right, I think we've got one last question here, and then I'll check, make sure we've gotten to everybody. Is the NERR management plan going to establish priorities only for the NERR, or is it also establishing priorities for other partners? So kind of getting at that collaborative aspect.
That's a good question. I have not yet explored the management plan process. I think it's probably, at least initially, very much focused on the kind of day-to-day running of the reserve, how the lands in the reserve are monitored and researched and managed. But there'll be mention of, well, certainly it's done in partnership with agencies that we'd want to work with and organizations and private sector. And I imagine that those partnerships are kind of written into the management plan as key people that we'll kind of look to for guidance. So for example, one thing I didn't mention is that each NERR has an advisory board, and that would be, and they kind of, advise the general operation of the reserve, not just at a 10-year mark, but kind of month to month. And that would be a kind of a key role for partners to play to help to make sure that this becomes a community initiative and that we're getting the correct advisement from community partners. So I think that there's probably going to be a role to play in both the management plan and then from the advisory capacity. And also each NERR, I think every 5 years or so, or 10 years, goes through a new complete kind of an update of their management plan, like Superior just finished theirs. So that would be a chance to kind of reevaluate how things look and to get new input along the way. I'm excited for that part of the process. I mean, we're really focused on site designation now, but now that I'm watching Connecticut go through management plan writing and kind of thinking about what that means here, it's a chance to write something from scratch and really plan for the future of how we want to think about Green Bay. And although we'll be focusing on the reserve boundaries and the reserve designation, I think there's a chance to think broadly about work in Green Bay as a whole.
I think that's all of the major questions that we had coming through. I just want to thank you, Emily, for introducing everyone to the NERR and all the wonderful work you're doing. And I think I want to highlight something that Emily mentioned too already, that if you are looking to help keep this moving forward, that now is a great time to reach out to your Congress folk. So please make sure to contact your elected officials for your specific residents, and let them know that you care about the NERR and some of the other wonderful water policy decisions at play right now. So please make sure you're reaching out. I know Emily shared her contact information again. So thank you everyone for participating, and thank you, Emily, for giving us that intro. I think with the last couple minutes here, I will just remind everybody what is on deck for the day today. All right, so just as a reminder, you just sat through the wonderful and informative welcome and morning keynote. Up next, we have a break, and then we hope you'll join us back here at 10:30. We're going to have 3 different speakers between 10:30 and 11:15, talking about different restoration projects on Oneida Nation land, giving us an overview of the status of the Green Bay fisheries, and then finally some soil health and water quality impacts for land management practice changes across several Midwest states. So please come back and tune in with us between 9:30 or 10:30 and 11:15. We again have another keynote where we'll have Mayor Gingrich speaking, as well as 4 invited speakers between 11:30 and 12:30. We do have a fun Jeopardy game for everyone to participate in this afternoon. It is a wonderful way to disseminate information without having another slew of presentations. Not that presentations are bad, but it should hopefully jazz up the after lunch slump there a little bit. So please come back and join us for the Jeopardy game at 1:15. We'll be utilizing the chat function for you to participate. So please come and enjoy that with us. And then I said before in our intro, we have the wonderful opportunity to join the afternoon keynote to listen to Tia Nelson speak. So that's pretty much guaranteed to be an amazing talk. So please make sure you tune in for that at 2:30. After Tia Nelson's talk, please join us back here for a regional closing. We'll have one more small presentation and then some final words to wrap up our day together. So that's what lays out before you today. With that, we'll probably close this session just a minute early, but thank you again for tuning in and for your participation with our speakers this morning.